McPhee, the sheriff of Baghdad. This is another calls from quarantine. It used to be calls from the road, now it's calls from quarantine. I'm with a good friend of mine, and he designs load carrying equipment, right? And this is really what we're going to talk about, because I get a ton of questions about, you know, body armor, how to set it up, what's good, what's not, what's the future. So I know a guy who does this, and I figured I'd call him. So I'll turn this over to you. You want to introduce yourself, tell the guys a little something about you?
Sure. I've been doing this kind of work for about 30 years now. Mostly backpacks and pouches and vest design for soldiers. So I've seen a lot, and I've tried a lot. So I'd probably have something to add there.
Yeah. Well, I think this is what a lot of guys mistake is. You know, most of the guys listening know where I used to work. You know where I used to work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, guys are like, oh, did you see this new whatever? And I'm like, dude, we tried that in like the mid 90s and it didn't work. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, guys sometimes, because of most of this stuff is clever marketing, first world problems, whatever you want to call it. I think, you know, a lot of guys, you know, they get so ingrained to just seeing this for the first time on the internet, they don't realize, like, guys probably already tried this. And maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. If it didn't work, it was tweaked to something that worked a little bit better. And I would also say, if it did work, it was probably tweaked to make something that was better, right? So I always feel like guys never give credit to the past on how we got here.
Oh, it's so true. So some of the funnier stuff I've observed, one of the things was when Joe's at Fort Bragg or wherever they were got a glimpse of guys from behind the fence wearing certain things, it immediately was like, oh, we gotta have that. That's what those guys are doing, you know? And so people would kind of jump to conclusions like, oh yeah, that makes the most sense. If those guys are doing it, yeah, that's the way to do it. Well, as you know, it doesn't always work that way because
right.
Straight up conventional airborne operations or conventional light infantry operations versus DA type operations, you know, it's not the same requirement. You know, the chest rig you carried on long distance patrols versus the kit you carried to kick down doors, very different in the packing list, the size, all of the kind of pieces to that. So what we found is, you know, that Joe would want to jump to conclusions on certain things, but there were also certain things that we were like, stand by. You know, what you really need versus what you want are not the same thing. You know, and from the design side, we were always struggling to say, this is really what you guys need. You know, this is what you want. What you want is a freaking 3-pound kitchen sink, but you're not getting it. So we always had to find that balance. And that's the fascinating thing about this kind of work is you put 10 NCOs in a room and you ask them, what's the ideal system for you? And you're going to get the guy that spent a lot of time in Afghanistan in some, you know, rough terrain, not real urban-y type stuff. Then you're going to get the guy that spent a lot of his time in Baghdad. And his whole focus, even the type of medical stuff he had to carry for his individual first aid kit is very different. You know, so you got to kind of tweak all that because when we're talking about conventional Army operations and what we're going to put on conventional soldiers, it's got to be this kind of standardized process because, you know, we'd go broke if we gave everybody these incredible options that more special mission units have those kind of options.
Well, as the money star major for all this gear, as one of my final jobs, like, you know, man, you know, when the Cry uniforms came out, you know, or the Cry body armor came out, it's like, you know, the government pays, because we're going to buy a ton of it, we're getting pretty good prices, generally speaking, you know. And, you know, the Cry body armor comes out, you know, the unit wants to buy it, and, you know, I got to answer to McChrystal on why the fuck is this $432 for one guy? Like, I'm like, well, first off, you know what I mean? I just write the check. So if you want to tell me no, tell me no. But don't yell at me for these guys developing something that they want, and then the price tag comes in and you're bitching at me, right? So I would say, you know, there is, even at the highest levels, you know, there's, you know, reality is everyone wants, you know, what Superman's got. The truth is like, no one can afford it. You know what I mean? So the truth, even with us, is always in between. And I always like how, you know, certain, like brands will become this household name because we used it, even though, you know, it may not work for you. And I'd also tell you this is, you know, Western Iraq, walking into a Target, right? We're going to walk probably 20 to 30K tonight, maybe 40K in and out. You know, I set up my shit way different shoes, different belt, you know, whatever, right? In Baghdad, in and around Baghdad, we're with the armored vehicles. My armored vehicle's never more than 100 yards away. I could probably streamline this down to pretty light. I could wear low top like running shoes. And, you know, and it wouldn't be an issue. You know, you get on a helicopter and you land in the hinterland. If you don't have boots on, you're crazy. You climb a mountain in Afghanistan, right? And you don't have a stiff sole boot where you could do one toe and you're standing up on the next rock. You know, fail. So it's always, guys are always asking me how to set up their gear. And I'm always like, it's got to be smart for what you are actually going to do. You know what I mean? And I would say, just like you did, very different gear from the 20K walk-in through the, you know, Western Iraqi desert to the in and around, you know, Baghdad in armored vehicles to a helo assault somewhere else to, you know, the climbing the mountains in Afghanistan. You know, a lot of guys in Afghanistan didn't even carry pistols. Why? Right. I could carry more rifle mags because we're not going to get that close to anything.
Yeah, I'd seen a lot of that same kind of thing. And so one of the things that I've constantly look at is how guys are configuring their load to the environment they're operating in and how many people kind of get that wrong. And I'll use examples, and I love our brothers, the Marines. But when those guys were doing a lot of that house-to-house work in Fallujah area, they were loaded down. I saw guys clearing rooms with so much shit on their body. And I'm like, man, you are not fleet of feet in that kit. You are, and in that urban fight, your ability to cross that road in X amount of time and be less of a target is much more critical than you wanting to carry 12 magazines for your weapon.
So,
you know, like, yeah, you gotta be smart about stuff, and you gotta pare that down. And when we started this whole push, now you and I remember the old days of the pistol belt and suspenders and the Alice gear, right?
Love it.
Right? And I will tell you that some of that is coming back, and I can get into that in a minute. But when we talked about and we started moving into modularity, the ability for that left-handed guy to put his ammunition in a critical spot where he could reach it quicker and to be able to put his hand grenades or, you know, any of his grenades on the left side of his body so he could access them quicker. That was the key piece. And then you had Sergeant Majors roll in like, bullshit, I want dress right dress. I want it to be just like it was with fucking pistol belt suspenders. 2 ammo pouches, 1 first aid case, 1 compass pouch, boom, 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 2 canteens, left and right hip. You know, that kind of stuff. And we were like, no, time out, guys. This whole modernization effort, and it started just when the GWAT was kicking off. This whole modernization effort is based on the individual capability of that soldier to access certain pieces of equipment as fast as possible and to be able to tailor the load specific to the environment, the terrain, and all of those, and what weapon system he's carrying and all that kind of stuff. You know, and so we pushed soldiers in this direction. Like, yes, you can now work on having a custom tailorable kit based on your needs. And the Army gave us a little bit of pushback. And we saw that in, you know, in industry and even what the government was doing.
Man, the whole dress right dress thing, like, it makes me giggle, but at the same time, yeah, seriously, right? And, that was one of the things I liked about special operations in general is, okay, do you have everything we require of this mission? Yes. Mm-hmm. Then why do I care where you keep it? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I do understand the dress right dress of the Army, but it can't be so strict that you're actually hindering a guy from being able to do, I'm a lefty. So, my whole life, in the Army and in Rangers, like, I was right-handed. Why? Because you can't be left-handed. They can't train you. You're, you know what I mean? You're not setting yourself up. So I was just right-handed for, my first so many years in the Army. And, only not because I was better. It was because, that's just kind of how it was. And I think with the modularity, I think it's great, right? But the truth is I don't believe that the, body armor and Molly was any more modular than the LBE, right? Because if you were going to move something, you'd be sitting on your bunk going, oh, what are we doing next? Okay, yeah, let me switch this around a little bit. Mm-hmm. So, I think the word modularity has kind of been, I don't know, a little bit kind of bastardized in the fact that, like, you should be tailoring for each mission. You know what I mean? Like, I think every soldier should have, like, a plate carrier for simple in and out missions, for speed missions, and I also think every soldier should have, the LBE for the mountain stuff. And, instead of like, well, you got one plate carrier and you got to switch it out, switch your pouches or whatever, guys should have like different stuff. And I love modularity for these days, but at the same time, I feel like modularity has led in certain ways that also didn't help. But I would also say it goes back to the Sergeant Major, with the, dress right dress, man. Where's your pouch? That's not in the right place.
Yep. And, one of the things that we focus on when I'm training guys on how to put their rucksacks together, how to put the weight in the right place on their rucksacks and things like that, and all of those things, right? You put a rucksack on over armor and your fighting loads, whether it's you've got your pouch fixed directly to your armor or you've got a set standalone harness system, chest rig, whatever it may be. You've got to position things so things don't get in the way of other stuff. But things like first aid items, right? Because I need to know exactly where on your body those first aid items are, because that's what I'm going to treat you as in dark and night, whatever it may be. So SOPs, first aid items, absolutely. Maybe a couple other critical items of equipment on your kit. Everybody else needs to know where those things are going to be. But, where my ammo is and my frags and other things like that, I have to have the flexibility to put them where I want. And it doesn't come from a manual. So this is when you're talking to your students and other folks about, hey, where's the best place to put that? The best place to put that is based on all of your experience. And that might be 100% time on the range or in your basement, right? Just figuring shit out. When I do a rapid magazine change, where's the best place for that to be? That economy of movement that we always talk about, position of the weapon, position of your head, position of the equipment, position of the hand you're loading with, that's what you gotta learn, and they can look at pictures of guys like you and guys from units like you and guys from the Ranger Regiment and even conventional guys and go, oh, that's a great idea. Well, it's a great idea for him. Not necessarily a great idea for you. So it all comes down to, you gotta train. If you want to have your kit configured best for you, you gotta spend some time in that kit. You can't just make stuff up or stuff that you read in a book or a manual. And it's all time on the range. It's time in your kit. During the earliest part of this COVID craziness, I wasn't able to go into my office, and I've been playing around with some new gun belt concepts. I was wearing a couple of new gun belt concepts on my body, fully loaded out, pistol on it, around my house for 8 hours. And I was just doing basic stuff. Maybe a little bit of movement stuff, maybe some reload drills and things like that. And I learned a ton. I learned much more than sitting up and reading, going through the internet, talking to other folks, like, this is, why do I make this thing adjust this way? Why do I make this thing? why am I going to put my pistol in a slightly more forward position than absolute neutral to my hip? Because that's what works best for me. And so much of that is based on your dimensions, your level of fitness and flexibility. You know, that's another one, right? We are not as svelte. Remember when you were 22 years old and you were freaking 180 pounds and lean, mean fight machine, right? How you set your kit up and you know, with the location of your pistol on your hip and things like that might be slightly different than it is today. You know, because I got a shoulder that's blown out, so I don't have that flexibility to rotate that arm and get in to a pistol that's in a high carry mode, or I got to change the cant from that 5-degree FBI cant to something else because of those things.
Man, I'll tell you, I don't think you can understate this enough, but every time, like, I set up like a split front chest rig, right? We used to take AK vests, cut them and put zipper buckles in the front, right? And wear them kind of like an old LBE for different stuff. And every time I would change one thing on my loadout, I would put it on and run down to the range, right? Let's just say I changed something for a rifle. I would run down to the range with that rifle, which is probably about a mile and a half. Right? Just jog down. You know, this isn't really fitness. This is kind of like just a good jog. And I'll tell you, I can't tell you how many times where, like, I changed one pouch and I'd go to run down range and like 100 yards in, it's digging in my side. I don't even get to the range. Like, oh, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And you would think, like, you know, I moved this pouch, like, you know, from, you know, mid hip to in front or behind, or I moved it 2 inches. And, you know, and then, my old boss, when I was on a sniper team, you know, like, we had so many weirdo guns, and each one of these weirdo guns, you can't use the same ammo pouches for them. And so we were kind of, you know, each gun had its kind of own generic setup, and every time we tweaked something, or, you know, we got a mission coming up where we're going to use these specific guns, we'd get out our kit, we'd put it on, like, well, I also need this, so we put it on our kit. We'd run down range and be like, you know, were we able to adjust it and be able to run that mile and a half, shoot a little bit, and run the mile and a half back? And and I can't tell you how many times I made it like 100 yards, like, yo, this ain't gonna work.
Right.
But I don't think guys are, you know, I don't think guys are putting in that level of thought into their gear. And this is how, like, sometimes the guys will show me stuff like, hey, what do you think of this? Yeah, that won't work. You know, how do you know? Oh, I tried that, you know, and I didn't make it 100 yards off the back of the bed, right? So, yeah, I think, you know, always wearing it. And I'll tell you, man, like, you know, wearing that stuff around, I mean, you wouldn't think it'd be a big deal until you start doing it every day. And then, you know, I'll tell you another thing is the 1911 days, when I used to have to pretty much 24/7 wear a 1911 on my hip. Yep. I can't tell you how quick I was fucking tired of carrying a 1911. And then, you know, the G19 comes out, and it's like, yeah, I could wear this all day, every day. You know what I mean? Like,
I could do PT with this thing on. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, we used to do that shit all the time, right? So, you know, I always tell guys, hey, be smart for what you do. You know what I mean? And you know, hey, the guy who might throw a vest in his car just because, I get it, you know what I mean? But, you know, I would be setting up that vest for what might happen. You know, I'm driving to and from work. Who knows why you might need a vest or rifle, right? Always good to be prepared, but, you know, you'd have to think through what are the things that could happen in my day, and with those things, what type of things would I need?
Yeah. One of the things that we saw was in the mid-GWAT time frame, we were pushing a lot in the Iraq area. A lot of guys weren't spending time prone. They weren't going to prone in train-ups and stuff like that, because they were looking at, okay, we're going to Iraq, and this is what we're going to do. You know, we're going to be much more urban patrol type stuff. You know, we're going to be working out of BIAP or wherever they were going to be working out of. And they weren't spending a lot of time prone, and then they would do some prone stuff, because that's a very efficient way to fire your weapon, be covered, that their pouches were in a spot where they couldn't access them there. So when guys are trying to configure their stuff, they got to think about that. Like, yeah, taking a knee and reloading and things like that is all great, but there are times where getting prone is a critical piece to that, because that's going to save your life. And the ability to access your kit, critical items of equipment, such as your, obviously, magazines, that's something you got to think about. You know, and some guys are like, I want a completely clean front. Yeah, that makes sense too in some places, especially like if you spend some time with a sniper or other stuff like that. We're getting down low constantly, I had a conversation about 5 years ago with a sergeant major at the 82nd, and he said, why can't we do it the way we used to do it? Remember with the LBE, we just opened our pistol belt up, and we could rig our parachute harness under it, like real easy. We'd let it out all kind of long and cool. And when I went to prone, my pouches played out to the side. Like, why the fuck can't we do that still? And so I answered, I think we can. I think we can come up with something that gives you a little bit of everything. And so, there's a couple of new items. First Spear's doing one they call the Joker. Some other folks are doing stuff similar, and it essentially is a split front chest rig that actually allows you to drop it down low and actually rig it with a T11 parachute harness very effectively. But when you see a guy wearing it, you're like, that's like the old fucking LBE that I was wearing back in the 80s and 90s. Holy shit, And so we see a lot of this, what is old is new again.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. Because that old thing, it actually fucking works. The pistol belt has been around since 1903. Spanish-American War was when that first pistol concept belt was fielded. And it didn't change much. It got material changed. It became nylon in the Vietnam era, right? But it was this, you could still, on the current pistol belt, part of the Alice system, you could still hang those old World War II hooks to it. Because guys were still carrying shit that way. So when you can look to the past and you can learn a lot and go, you know what? That fucking works. An SF buddy of mine, I was talking to him the other day and he was talking about that. He's like, yeah, remember the good old days? You had a pistol belt suspenders, you had 4 ammo pouches, and you used some of them for mags and some of them for other stuff. You had a butt pack on the back. You had a rat fucking MRE back there, maybe some wet weather gear and a pair of socks, and a big stupid knife, and you could live off that thing for an extended period of time. Like, yeah, I remember those days. I remember a lot of guys doing it. I remember how much the fucking clip dug into my back when I put an Allen pack on. I got it, So we got rid of the clips and we used 550 cores. We field craft, is another critical thing that I think we're seeing not in existence as much anymore. Is, modified your shit with whatever you had, whether it was zip ties and 550 cords. You got rid of those metal clips. You got rid of this. You changed that. You could find a mama-san, or better yet, have a sewing machine. Like find that kid in the barracks, and I was that kid in the barracks with a sewing machine. That's why I do what I do now. Like who'd modify your shit. I'd show up every week with new shit. I was the luckiest soldier in the Army. I was Pathfinder in the 82nd Airborne Division. And they allowed that free flexibility stuff that the regular line units were not doing. And so I learned, and I had that ability to modify shit and like, oh man, I want to do this and do that. And I made a lot of mistakes, like you said. You're like, well, that was dumb. I'm trying to rappel out of a fucking helicopter, and I got shit in the way of fucking trying to get on my brake hand and things like that. I'll never do that again. You learn shit the hard way.
Right.
Unfortunately, but it is fascinating. Once again, like I said, you put 10 NCOs in a room, you get 10 different opinions on how they want to wear their kit. So when you're talking to the people listening right now, and they're saying, oh, but you're not really telling me how I should do this. It's up to you, man. It's all about time on the range, time in the field, time crawling in the dirt. Go in your backyard. I don't care. Go in your backyard. Roll around. What hurts like a motherfucker? Why did I stop putting a canteen cup in my canteen carriers when I was on jump status? Because I fucking hated landing on that shit. You know what I mean?
Oh, for real, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old Charlie horse to the ass.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I'd also say, like, in Afghanistan, we weren't really wearing body armor because the climbs we were doing, like, it's ridiculous, right? And then when Iraq came around, you know, when I got my first plate carrier, you know, I put everything on the front plate. And then it hurt my back every day I wore it. I couldn't get in the prone. I couldn't do anything. And then, I think there's pictures of me where I went to a mesh, body armor carrier, like full size mesh. And I would just wear my LBE or my split front chest rig type stuff over the top. Why?
Right.
It carried everything I needed and it was the most versatile.
And that's another thing we see. So if you're doing a lot of operations around vehicles, small openings, armored vehicles, top hatches and stuff like that, I've got to wear my armor. And remember, armor is purely defensive, not offensive. And we can talk about that a little bit too. But I would much rather see a guy or girl put a load carriage system, chest rig, over the top of that slick armor so they can pull it off and put it on when they mount, dismount, whatever, so they can move more freely in that confined space of that vehicle. And it all depends on your job, you know. If you're dismounting constantly, I got it. But if you need that ability to have it be as slick as possible to fit through that little 30-inch hatch constantly up in the turret of the vehicle or whatever it may be, but the ability to put on a secondary load carriage system sometimes makes sense. So we all want to put our stuff directly on our armor, but that's not the best answer all the time.
For real. Yeah, it's not, man. It's not. And I personally think, the LBE, and I'll kind of explain to you what I used to tell my guys, which will lead into a weight conversation, but, I would tell my guys, if you wear something directly on your hip, a pistol, your magazines, right? That's kind of like wearing zero, weight. Why? Because the hip can carry weight really well. So whatever you put on your belt is like, it's really like, you know, it's kind of no penalty to the human body. Yep. Now, you wear a leg rig or you wear pouches that come below your waist, right? That's adding weight to your body and it will smoke you. And then I used to wear the leg rig with the 1911 and I had a charge bag and, you know, we do like a 16, 20 hour day. And I would be smoked, and a buddy of mine, like, we get done, and he'd be like, hey, let's go for a run. I'm like thinking, you know, or he'd be like, hey, let's go for a run and hit the gym. I'd be like, fuck that. Like, I need a day of rest, you know? And I'm like, how come this guy's got so much more energy than me? I work out with him all the time. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's better at a few things than me. I'm better at a few things. But like, you know, how is he got so much energy? What I realized is, he didn't wear a leg rig, right? And this is back in the big old RBA or the next gen right after the RBA armor days. And, you know, so I'm like, huh. So I took my leg rig off, next 16-hour mission kind of day. Like, we get done, and it was like, hey, man, you want to go for a run? I was like, yeah. What I didn't notice is anything below the waist, hanging below the waist, 1 ounce below the waist, is like throwing 10 pounds in a backpack at the end of the day for smoking your body. Does that make sense? So I'd always tell guys, if you put it on the waist, this is kind of like a 0. If you hang it below the waist, this is like every ounce or pound is like throwing 10 pounds in the backpack. So if you got 8 pounds of shit hanging below your waist, it's like putting 80 pounds in a backpack. Of course, that's going to tire you out quick. You know what I mean?
That's right. Oh, huge. So one of the things that we saw, first time I went to Afghanistan was 2002, April timeframe, and we were seeing all the conventional units that had very minimal, you know, they were brand spanking new to this big combat thing, right? And so they would pass around these drop leg holsters, the Black Hawk drop leg holster, and these guys would have this thing strapped around just above their knee, and it would flop around and fucking be, but it looked fucking cool in photos, you know, so like that was one of those kind of things, right? So we were always like, God, you can't do that. A long movement with a thigh rig is eating so much energy of your body, just it's a moment arm, right? So it's just out there swinging, and you're just eating much more energy than you need to. And that's why, as you've seen, as you know very well, holsters started climbing very quickly, mostly by the special mission guys and any of the guys on the soft side of the house started getting smart about that. And a lot of it had to do with that their body armor started to shrink very quickly. Part of the reason where a leg rig, a thigh rig was effective, because you had these big, giant, bulky body armor systems, and the only way we were going to access that pistol was to be able to reach around all that shit and all those pouches and get down there and grab it. We did a whole time in motion study years ago, and we looked at the location of the pistol on the hip and the location of the pistol on the in a cross draw configuration and all this kind of stuff, and your ability to access it out of a Humvee, dismounted, and then we did we had guys do distance runs with them, and it was brutal. It just wasn't effective, but it looked fucking awesome in photos.
I know. Well, I'd also say this is the Eagle, was it Eagle, the all cloth nylon pistol, lower leg rig. Before there was Kydex, there was an all nylon one.
Sure.
That because the nylon would flex and give, that holster is singly lost more guns than any other dude ever lost a gun, because you couldn't keep a 1911 or a heavy gun in that all nylon pouch, because it would give. And me personally, I think that holster spawns, you gotta have the lanyard to the pistol.
Yes. And to this day, and it's entrenched in my brain, I feel like I always have to lanyard my pistol. And a lot of guys look at me like, dude, you don't really have to lanyard your pistol. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just have to. Because that's what I was doing 25 years ago. I don't work around boats. And I totally, lanyards, if you work with a lanyard all the time and you're able to have one where it's not a snag issue and, things like that, that's great. But there's a lot of liability in lanyards.
It takes getting used to lanyards to wear a lanyard. And then when the Safari Land, the plastic holster came out, I was like, lanyards are dumb. I'm done with that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm no longer worried about the gun falling out because it's in something hard.
Yep.
And then, okay, so the next thing I would tell my guys is, plate carriers, special forces guys, unit, we had plate carriers before the Army was, before the Army went to it, and guys would put all their pouches on the front of their plate carrier, which it's a multi-layered problem. But the biggest thing is weight. 1 pound on the front of your plate, right, equals, again, throwing 10 pounds in the backpack at the end of the day. The problem is guys will put 4, 6 mags off the front. They'll have their little GPS. They'll throw their pistol. Guys will end up throwing 10 pounds on the plate. That's like, throwing 100 pounds in a backpack and walking. Of course, you're going to be more tired, right? So, again, in my rules for guys to wear stuff is I was always trying to get guys to keep the front of the plate clean. Iraq, jumping walls, climbing shit. You gotta have the front clean. The prone, you gotta have the front clean.
Yep.
But if guys could carry most of their magazines and their pistol over their hip, right? These guys were faster and more mobile on a nightly basis.
Yes.
And those are kind of my rules. And I'll tell you this is, how the Army always talks about PCI, pre-combat inspection. You're, as a troop sergeant major, you need to inspect your men before we go on a mission, right? PCIs don't work. They don't fucking work. Because I'll inspect you, right? And when we get done with the inspection, before we roll out, you just go to your shit and throw more shit in. You know what I'm saying? Like, the PCI never fucking worked for me, right? So what I started to do is, we get back from the mission in Iraq, been a long night, and I'll be like, hey man, what are you doing? Nothing. Hey, I need your hand for a second. Come with me. On the fucking scale. And the dude would be like, duh, and he'd be on the scale. What I would tell my guys is, no more than 55 pounds. Right? You're wearing more than 55 pounds. Like, you're a 200 pound guy. That's 20% of your body weight. How effective you think you're going to be running around 20% of your body weight, right? So I would tell guys 55 pounds. And, back then, a plate carrier, front and back plate, I don't know, probably weighed 20, 25 pounds.
Oh, yeah. The original plates, the sappy,
Yep. Yeah. So, so you really only got about 20 pounds to play with in gear. Mm-hmm. That's not a lot of weight in gear, you know what I mean? And so I come back and I do a post-combat inspection, and I'd always try to catch guys off guard. I didn't do it every day. And then if I noticed a guy was kind of slugging behind, who I know, as a boss, I know this kid's kind of fit. Like, why is he slugging tonight? I get back, hey, come with me on the scale. And like, guys would have 14 magazines. You know what I mean? And I'd be like, dude, 14 mags? Like, seriously? And like, well, Black Hawk Down, they needed magazines. Like, okay, all right. There was other problems that could have prevented. I'm not even going to go there, but this is Black Hawk Down, right? How about just carry a basic load? That cuts your ammo in half, right? And then I'll tell you the biggest thing is a guy would carry the big fucking knife, a Leatherman, and then a pocket auto folder, and then a guy, he'll also want to carry a hatchet. And you're like, dude, you got like 4 or 5 blades here. Like, seriously? I'd be like, look,
pick one.
I'd be like, pare it down to one. My opinion, what I carry is the Leatherman because it does the.
Yeah, right.
Just saying.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you talk about Black Hawk Down. We actually had a term on the R&D side. We called it the Mogadishu syndrome. And I'm talking conventional guys. Conventional guys in the early GWOT were all like, 12 mags, 12 mags, 12 mags. We need 12 mags. And we're like, you're not doing yourself any favors. You are a much easier target to hit when you're carrying 15 extra pounds of freaking ammo and shit you can't even use in a fight. The human torso, you have a limited amount of real estate that is accessible to you. And we always used to say, the shit you're carrying on your body, you have to, for the fight, the stuff you're carrying on your body for the fight, you have to have access to yourself, the critical items. You can have stuff on your back, you can have stuff in other locations that your buddy needs to get to, but that's not shit you need during the fight. That's stuff you need when things have calmed down a little bit and you need, whatever it may be. Sensitive site exploitation stuff or whatever, all that kind of thing. But what you need for that fight, and it ain't 15 magazines, and we called it the Mogadishu syndrome. We're like, guys, and the soft guys did it much earlier than anybody else as far as tearing that shit back, because you guys were engaged. So your learning curve was much shorter. Within a couple of months or weeks even, guys are like, there is no way we are burning through 12 magazines on a mission like this. Let's drop it down to 5 or 6. Let's go to a basic load. And we still, at the end of the average type mission, I might only burn through 2 magazines, something like that. So yeah, and it was, I think in your environment, it was probably a little easier because you could kind of just hammer down on guys and they would be like smart about it. But on the conventional army side, we're like, guys, you gotta stop. I need 15 magazines. I need 15 magazines. No, you don't. You gotta trust your resupply system. And that's one of the pieces. And so when I talk soldiers load in the big picture, a lot of it comes down to the resupply system. If I tell a soldier that 24/7, all terrain, all environment, it doesn't matter. If I could guarantee you that I can give you a resupply every 6 hours of food, ammo, batteries, med gear, whatever it may be, if I can guarantee you I can reload all of that stuff for you, how heavy does your pack have to be? How much ammo do you feel you have to carry? And I'm talking guaranteed, right? We've never been able to guarantee the resupply. We've all been fucked by the lack of resupply, even though it was promised, because shit gets in the way. We know that. We understand that. Whether it's a tactical situation, the enemy situation, the environmental situation. But if we could figure that out, if we crack the resupply nut with a guarantee that every E4 out there knows that he's gonna get, every 6 hours he can get a resupply, then we would reduce long-term injuries and increase the tactical mobility of those units a lot. especially in rough terrain like the mountains of Afghanistan and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we would do is we would resupply ourselves. What I mean by that is, like, we'd pack a bag with, like, let's just say, small pack, 30 mag, 10 frags, maybe some charges. So it's just like, you could send a guy, or two guys, or, a team or whatever, get to the truck, go get the resupply bag.
Yeah, right.
And then when we did helo stuff, right, we would, kind of ridiculous, but the poncho parachute.
Yep.
Right? We'd pack our resupply stuff. We'd put it on one of our inso birds, so if they're waiting to come and get us, they could easily do a quick flyover and kick out the resupply we had packed, right? So I would say, like, if as a unit, if you're planning your own initial resupply, right, you are more likely to get that than, the battle goes on. Now it's about logistics. And, so if guys just kind of took that into their own hands, right, because all the time Joe's like, they're going to resupply us. And it's like, well, we learn, like, it may not be coming, but if we kind of do this ourselves, we might be able to get that quicker or in a more timely manner. So we used to always do the resupply thing ourselves. But yeah, I would also tell you this is, I had a guy kind of, I wouldn't say burn in because he wasn't injured, but he kind of burned in off a fast rope one night. And, they made this guy, he was a smaller guy, probably 5'6", 150 pounds. Of course, they make this guy carry the quickie saw, right?
Right.
Of course. So he kind of burns in, and I was like, dude, are you all right? Like, what's up? And I was the boss at the time, and then he was just like, he's like, man, I just couldn't hang on to the rope. I was trying to hang on as best as I could, which I seen his hands were on the rope. It just, he couldn't slow down, even with his feet on the rope. And I was like, well, let's look at your stuff. Hey, he had, with the quickie saw, his armor, all his equipment, helmet, all of it on a scale. It was like 110 pounds of shit.
Wow.
And I'm like,
for a light dude like that to rope and, that's rough.
I'm like, first off, dude, like, I get it. You got to carry the quickie stuff. I get it. It's heavy. I get that. But I think he had 15 or 18 mags on him. He had all kinds of shit, man. And I was just like, fuck, man, like, you can't do this. And that's when I came up with my 55-pound rule. And I'll tell you this, once I started the 55-pound rule and I started, like, doing the post-combat inspections and lightening guys' gear, we were way more mobile, and I'll tell you this is something guys don't talk about is two things we're going to do almost every night. Fight people. You want to fight a guy with 100 pounds of shit, or you want to fight a guy with 50 pounds of shit, Yeah. The next thing is we're going to have to carry people. You want to carry someone and 100 pounds of shit, or you want to carry someone and 50 pounds of shit. You know what I mean? And if that 50 pounds is packed accordingly where you can carry it best, of course you'll be able to carry someone else better, right? So I think that's a lot of times, guys are so looking at the self-preservation piece that they forget, like, well, what if you got to carry someone else? Like, I'll tell you, I had to carry a kid. Actually, his family hit me up. I was the last one to see him alive. He was a big army kid. There's this like mushroom cloud over Baghdad, and I'm like droning. We've been out all night. It's like first thing in the morning. Like, I just want to go to sleep. I'm in the lead vehicle, and my boss tells me turn around over the radio. So I'm like, we mean wearing our armored vehicles. I'm like, turn around. I turn around. I see a mushroom cloud over Baghdad. Like, oh, I know where we're going. Like, drive the mushroom cloud. So it's a kind of mash cow. A bunch of army guys hurt. The kid I had was 6'7", and, he had his shoulder pads, his neck pad, his groin pad, right? And I had a fireman carry him to the HLZ, and I had to set up the HLZ. And, I felt like, man, like, carrying that kid, I bet he was 350 pounds, all I could do to walk the, 100 yards to where I wanted the helo to land. But then, of course, the helo lands 200 yards from that, so I had to carry him even farther. But when I laid him in the helicopter, he was actually longer door to door than the helicopter.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, you know, you don't think, I mean, you know, let's just say this kid's 6'7" and weighs 275 pounds. If he's got fucking 100 pounds of kit, how, you know, now, you know, I have retard strength, you know what I mean? Like, I trained for this my whole life. It was a slow going movement, but I got him there.
Right.
Imagine, you know, 250 pound army kids trying to move this guy. It'd take a whole squad.
Yeah, right.
You know, and I can't tell you, like, you know, look, that was one of the things, like, when I would come up by you guys as a sergeant major for the gear and be an observer, and that was one thing is, like, the first question in my eyes is, you know, we always called it, what's the penalty? Penalty is always weight to the soldier. Always, always, right? So, yeah, I can't say, like, how many times, like, you know, once I got my guys lighter, and, you know, started doing like more common sense based stuff. And if, look, you're worried that you don't have enough magazines, pack the resupply. You know what I mean? Pack 50 mags, put it in a backpack, put it in your vehicle. I don't care, right? But if we need it and we got armored vehicles, why are we carrying all that stuff when we could call on the radio, pull the armored vehicle out right up front and run out, get it and back.
Yeah. And what's funny about that is even the conventional, the Molly rucksack system, the rifleman configuration comes with a 6-magazine bandolier. It holds 6 30-round magazines for the M4, and it is you know, you can snap it in the front pocket of the assault pack, you can snap it inside the rucksack, you can kind of sling it independently, or you can hang them in a vehicle. You know, and a lot of people don't realize that. Oh, we have that capability. Yeah, we issue you guys this 6-mag bandolier. And that's fine. You're all using it for your freaking hygiene kit. I support that too. But you do have that capability, you know, like you can do this. It may not be in a manual anywhere, but it was thought of, you know, and it's really kind of funny. We try on the design side to figure in all those pieces. You know, there was something you touched on earlier about the hip. The biggest thing for us, and one of the biggest frustrations is the Alice pack did not transfer the load onto the hip. The hips are the ideal weight-bearing surface on the body. So when the Army started into this Molly thing, you know, the whole focus was the science of load carrying. The ability to transfer the weight of that rucksack off the shoulders and lower back and onto the hip. We always talk about this thing called thoracic outlet syndrome or rucksack paralysis. Your fingers ever go numb when you're carrying a heavy rucksack?
All the time.
Right? And that's simply because what you were doing is you were crushing the brachial nerve in your shoulder area, which runs the nerves down onto your fingers. So you're crushing those and you're reducing the A circulation and the nervous, reaction. And so your hands go numb. Well, when you took a rucksack with an efficient hip belt system and you put that on and you put a preponderance of the weight of that rucksack, not all the weight, usually about 40 to 60% of the weight of that rucksack, get it on the hip, you actually saw the rucksack paralysis issue going away or being at least reduced. And we found that we actually did a test years ago that we took guys and had them fire for records, and then 2 days later, we had them put rucksacks on, no hip belt, do the same thing on a 10-mile movement, and fire for records. And we found that their rifle scores were actually reduced because of that lack of dexterity in their fingers. And so that's something you got to pay attention to. So when you talk load, you talk load transfer, the ability to carry that stuff in your hip is critical. But here's the motherfucker. We also need to carry a bunch of stuff on our hips, like you were saying. You know, whether it's ammunition, any of those critical items of equipment, we all want to carry sub-belts. We all want to carry stuff in those locations because it is the most effective way. But as soon as we throw a rucksack into that picture, it's like, damn it, I can't wear a hip belt at the same time and carry critical tactical items in those same locations. So that funky balance is what kind of screws us on the design side and on the kind of the practical side of the house. Like, hey, how do we get Joe to efficiently do all these kind of things? And that's the long pole in the tent of the big picture of load carriage design, is all of the pieces. And when you talk about carrying a casualty, fireman's carry, like all of those kind of pieces, like those are the outliers that we can't plan for that. We just got to suck it up and deal with it as best we can. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. Look, you can't train and for everything. You got to be good at the 90%, and then something pops up that's the 1%, right? This is what we got to figure out when it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just life. But I think if you're good at the 90% of what you do, right? These little things that might pop up wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk about weight of the armor, right? And I know earlier we were joking about RBA. Do you know off the top of your, because I know it was heavy. You remember what RBA weighed?
For some reason, 26 pounds sticks in my head, but I could be completely wrong on that.
I remember it was heavy, and as a lefty, right, it only had like the right shoulder, like cut diagonal. So like as a lefty, I just had to suck it up. You know what I mean? So yeah. Your armor doesn't get in the way of your shoulder. Like, I'm way past that. Like, I'm expert level shit here,
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next stuff to come out that we got was like Paraclete full body armor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you remember what that weighed?
I don't. Because body armor actually got heavier for a period of time when we started looking at what we called the DAP pieces, which went on the shoulders, the neck pieces, the groin pieces, and then we added side plates, the little 6x6 or 6x8 side plates.
Yeah.
It was brutal. If 15 years ago you would have told me that the conventional army was going to allow its soldiers to wear plate carriers, I would have said, no, they're not. They have this thing, and it was called the Casualty Reduction Model, CASRAT. Casualty Reduction Model was based on the past 70 years of casualties, and they looked at where impacts happened on their bodies as far back as World War II, and Korea was on a lot of that study was done, and then obviously into Vietnam. But they looked at the average location of impacts to the body that caused catastrophic injuries, and the rule was, when interceptor body armor was being fielded, the rule was you have to cover all those critical areas of the body with at least soft armor, and then you've got to cover the critical chest area, heart lung area, front and back, with hard armor. And that's what you're going to do, and there is no getting away from that. So we were kind of pigeonholed in body armor design when talking about how we can reduce the weight of the armor by reducing the area of coverage. And so the soft elements, you guys were the first guys to say, look, there were a lot of reasons for it. One of the reasons was we have the most highly trained medics in the world. If I get to them alive, they're going to keep me alive. So they were willing to sacrifice that casualty reduction area of coverage for lighter weight, more mobility, because mobility is a huge one. You ever try to get into an isosceles firing position with interceptor body armor on? You
can't do anything with that armor.
No, right. You're chicken winging the pistol, with your elbows way out and all that kind of shit. But so, when the conventional army started pushing in that direction, I was like, look at that. Good for you, conventional army, because mobility is such a key to this. So, and like I touched on earlier, body armor is purely defensive. It protects you from the offensive injuries. But sometimes it has an emotional effect or psychological effect on that soldier, knowing that I'm outside that door and I'm gonna go through that room. I'm wearing armor that is gonna help keep me alive doing that. So he may be a little bolder, in his willingness to kind of do that. So we look at it that way, and there's a lot of kind of issues with that. So armor is so critical to what we do, but as you've seen, there are some environments we can't wear armor. The jungle folks are like, we can't wear armor in the jungle. You got, at 10,000 feet in Afghanistan on a mountain with all the other stuff, like we can't wear armor. It just isn't practical. So we look at all this kind of stuff. I'm trying to be clear on what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, armor is so critical, but there are times where, why would you wear armor? Why would I wear rifle protected armor when I know the threat is only pistol?
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
And all of those things reduce the weight and increase my mobility, you know, and that's the huge piece to this. The faster I can move from street to street across that street, the less of a target I am, you know, and so lightweight is critical. And it's not by making pouches and stuff out of 500 denier Cordura versus 1,000 denier Cordura, because it's ounces. That's not what slows you down. We always look at, it's a 3 to 5 pound range of the soldier's kit that actually has a real effect on their mobility. A pound, not much. A pound in the rucksack, almost nothing. You know, we've done studies on that stuff. But when you start reducing 5 pounds on the soldier's kit, you know, and one 30-round magazine is about a pound, you know, so that all of that kind of stuff adds up. That's when you find that soldiers are much more efficient, fleet of feet, fastest, you know, moving up a stairwell. You've done this, right? You've probably moved through stairwells with 100 pounds on your body. You know, you get to the 5th floor, you're smoked. You know, are you ready to kick down that door now? You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
it's true. It's true. And it doesn't have to even be that much. In the Saddam days, we would clear so many houses in the neighborhood in a night. There was times where I literally couldn't bring my rifle up to my face. And I'll tell you, like, we went through a door, me and a buddy of mine, and like, I couldn't get my rifle up to my face because I was so tired because I'd done it so many times. So I just kind of leaned back and leveled the gun, and it ended up being a lady. And we didn't shoot her, right? But it ended up being this lady popped in front of us. And then I'm like, lean back just to get the gun level. and he was just like, he had his hands on his knees, and he was like, I don't know how I had the strength to do that. He's like, I figured if someone's going to kill us, they were just going to kill us. I was too tired. And he's like, how did you get your gun level so quick? I was like, well, I just kind of brought it to my hip and leaned back. And he was like, thanks, man, thanks. I was like, yeah, no problem. And look, yeah, as funny as this is, you know, my thing was always weight, like as light as possible. You know what I mean? Like I was the guy where I don't need my toothbrush to be 6 inches long. Let's cut it down to 3 inches. That's enough for me to, you know, brush my teeth and get in my mouth. So I've always been a light guy, and there's been times where you're just so smoked. But again, you know, that goes to that weight and preventing that.
Yeah, right. And ounces, you know, equal pounds. We've all talked about that in the past, you know, but when we talk about military loads, one of the things that we're so limited to, batteries aren't getting lighter, right?
Ugh.
Weapon systems aren't necessarily getting lighter. Less ammo certainly is lighter. But who am I? I mean, who am I, the civilian guy helping soldiers get their kit ready? Who am I to tell you that you can't carry X amount of ammo when you're the guy that's been doing this for a long time? And, you know, like, so it's hard to speak with a level of authority. So we study that and we say, you know, based on what we've seen, based on all our, post-combat surveys, and we tend to do a lot of that kind of stuff. Like, we take surveys and say, look, you know, how many of you guys did this? And what did you learn from that so we can learn from that, so we can put it in the manual? You know, we can do studies all day, but if it doesn't go into doctrine or it doesn't go into training, fucking useless. If it hides on a shelf, it's useless. And that's the key piece to us too, is taking all those compiled lessons learned, and for me, it's all about load carriage, right? It's how you carried the load, why you carried the load, and where, you know, based on those kind of things. But we gotta be able to push that out. And the asymmetric warfare group guys did a fabulous job of a lot of that work, and they really did. I'm sure you know some of those guys. You know Jose Gordon. You know.
Yeah, I know all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, just solid dudes with tons of experience that we were able to draw off really effectively, and that was just solid, good shit.
All right, so let me ask you this. We'll switch gears again. How much weight, like let's say standard combat load, right? 7 mag, you know, night vision helmet, right? How much weight do you think the average guy is carrying today And then how much weight do you think he was carrying in, let's say, 5 years ago, let's say 10, right?
I haven't seen a huge change in weight, and when I say huge, we're talking the 5 to 10 to 20 pounds, on the conventional Army side. The soft side is a little smarter about some of those things because they can manage that stuff a little bit better. But you gotta remember in the Army side of the house, they're still carrying the big giant Molly pack, that monster Molly main pack, and they tend to fill it regardless. Right. And part of it's because leadership is not willing to enforce, like you talked about, really putting the hammer down and getting those legs out. You really fucking need that shit in there. You really don't, For us, on the conventional side of the house, the only way that we can force soldiers to carry less shit is to give them a smaller rucksack. So the Army is currently fielding a new rucksack called the Molly 4000. It's 4,000 cubic inches, not 5,000 cubic inches that the Molly large pack was. So we've effectively forced soldiers to take 1,000 cubic inches out of their rucksack. And that's a good thing. The smaller rucksacks mean lighter rucksacks. And that needs to be our mantra, when we're putting stuff on soldiers' bodies. And we can't tell you, once again, that you can't carry X, Y, and Z into the fight or into the mission or into the training operation or into JRTC. We can't tell you that. But we can kind of pull you back a little bit. It's like pulling back on the reins, by saying, here's the package. Now you got to be a little smarter about it. So forcing young officers at the company level and NCOs to be better about not letting their soldiers carry all kinds of dumb shit. There's that classic scene from with Charlie Sheen in what's that Vietnam movie that Charlie Sheen did?
Platoon,
right?
Yeah.
And he's on his first patrol, and he's got his fucking rubber boots and all kinds of, and they're like, what the fuck? Like
he's got books.
Yeah, right. And that's a classic. Like what? But that's a leadership thing. NCOs and officers, they have to kind of enforce that because that young private just doesn't get it. He doesn't get that ounces equal pounds. He doesn't get that 10 miles down the road, that 15 extra pounds of shit is going to fucking crush him and have an effect on the tactical mobility of his entire platoon. Because you only move as fast as your slowest guys, and you got to focus on that.
Yeah, that's for sure. So the Army has a new 2-part body armor, right? There's the I seen a guy with it. He was kind of talking me through. He had I don't know. I guess there's an inner soft armor piece and there's an outer piece.
So you're talking about the MSV or modular scale?
Yeah. That's what he called them.
Yep. They took some really, years of these good surveys and talking to squared away soldiers and getting really good data. And that's one of the other things that's really critical to us is talking to soldiers and getting intelligent data from them. I always tell when I talk to soldiers and they're doing these surveys, and I say, I don't want to hear that it sucks, because that's useless. I want to hear it sucks, and I need to know why it sucks, because that's how we can improve your shit. The only way we're going to do that. Just because it sucks doesn't mean we can fix it. So the modular scalable vest is a really smart approach at body armor. It allows the soldier to tailor it way up or way, way down, almost to a concealable setup, right, based on the mission, and effectively reduce the weight of that body armor. And so this is very smart.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's smart. Because look, if you were a top gunner in a truck, I'd want every piece I could put on, right?
Right.
And then if you're assaulting the building or, you might, hey, I want regular plates. I want regular soft armor. If you were never leaving the inside of the vehicle, right? Maybe you could go with just soft armor. I don't know, but I think it's smart that different guys, wear different stuff. You know what I mean? And again, not the dress right dress because the sergeant major says we all got to have. Yeah. Because we're all not in the turret.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. And that is the beauty of that. And, the Army the Army is constantly trying to fix the problems. Once again, based on our post-combat surveys, learning from guys. We are constantly trying to fix it, but we can't fix stuff overnight, because of the R&D process and the testing process and things like that. But the modular scalable vest, I think they did a really good job on. And I think it's going to help Joe a lot as far as his ability to tailor that load specific to everything. And, we hear from the jungle guys, because that's become big again. We hear from the jungle guys saying, we're not wearing armor in the jungle. We can't do it. With the humidity levels at where they're at and the kind of loads we got to stuff and the terrain we got to deal with, we're just not going to do it. But that first, if there's ever a jungle fight and those first casualties start, parents here that their lives would have been saved if they had body armor on and they weren't wearing body armor. Whose head's going to roll? Is it going to be at the unit level? Is it going to be at the Congress level? Is it going to be, I'm sure everybody's going to blame Donald Trump, so we'll definitely get there.
Yeah. That's a given. That's a given.
Yeah, right. So what we got to look at is, we need smart designs that are fully modular so that we can at least give that young soldier a basic ballistic capability, based on the threat. If the threat is all frag, then soft armor is the thing. If the threat is all bullets, then obviously ballistic plates are a critical piece to that, but the ability to tailor it to those missions and leadership, young, platoon level and company level leaders, understanding the limitations and capabilities of that equipment and putting it into the doctrine and saying, this is what we're going to wear because this is smart. We're not going to overload our guys with scals too. We're not going to move through the jungle in full body armor and all this kind of stuff. We can't effectively do it. And we knew it. We learned all that shit in Vietnam. The last big jungle fight, and it lasted a lot of years. I always think that we should take some of these old SF guys that would love to play a part in the modern army training and bring them in, and not just SF guys, but even conventional guys that spend a lot of time in the jungle, and bring them in and have them sit down with these jungle guys in Hawaii and wherever they may be and say, this is what we know, and this is what I did 50 years ago, and not much has changed, and this is why you got to be smart about stuff. I think we could learn so much, and me, I'm a big student of history, all the World War II paratrooper stuff and all those things.
Yeah, me too.
I'm fascinated by it, and I'm still fascinated on why and how they carried stuff in World War II. You ought to see my office lined with rucksacks from as far back as World War II. I got the mountain rucksack that the 10th Mountain Division marched across Europe wearing. I've got all kinds of odds and ends stuff that I find that I'm just fascinated with. Why they carried it, why they designed it, how they built it, what was smart about it, what was not so smart about it, based on the limited technology of the day, But we have so much technology in our hands right now, and the improvements in ballistics and things like that, that we finally are getting to a smart modular body armor system that is going to make soldiers' lives much more efficient and save their lives at the end of the day. And that's the key piece, because that's what body armor is, a purely defensive piece. So that's my rant on that.
No, I love it. Love it. All right. Well, hey, we'll wrap it up. I'm John Shrek, the Sheriff of Baghdad. We're talking about load carrying and body armor and equipment, right? And we'll close it out here. I'll let you have the last words. What do you think?
Roger. So, once again, when the listening audience is thinking about how they're going to configure their stuff, I'll reiterate, it's all based on what works best for you. Left-handed, right-handed, the type of weapon system you're carrying, and you've got to do it and play with it and mess with it, figure it out. So, go to the range, mess around with this stuff and see what works best for you. And like John was saying earlier, just even moving a short distance with a new piece of kit, you will learn so much about why it's going to work really well or why it's not going to work really well. And so focus on that. And so really it all comes down to training. And train as you'll fight, depending on what that fight is.
Completely agree. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it. And
so welcome.
Talk to you